Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born on the 27th of January 1756 in Salzburg, a municipality in modern-day Austria. 400 years on, he remains a household name, and an archetype for sophistication, classical music, and aristocracy. This, however, was not how he was known for a lot of his life. He would enjoy a period of wealth surrounded by an early and late life of poverty. Join me as we will dive deep into the eclectic personality and extreme life lived by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Mozart was born as the youngest of 7 total children, born to Leopold Mozart and Anna Maria. Of these 7 children, 5 died in infancy. The remaining child, his sister, was Maria Anna Mozart, who was born in the Austrian summer of 1751. A day after Mozart's birth, he was baptized at St. Rupert's Cathedral in Salzburg. Mozart would remain Catholic for the duration of his life. Mozart was interested in the piano initially taught by his father, Leopold, who had a proficiency in the instrument due to his position as a violinist and small-time composer. Mozart's sister, Anna, would write after his death. He often spent much time at the clavier picking out thirds, which he was ever striking, and his pleasure showed that it sounded good. In the 4th year of his age, his father, for a game as it were, began to teach him a few minuets and pieces at the clavier. He could play it faultlessly and with the greatest delicacy and keeping exactly in time. At the age of 5, he was already composing little pieces, which he played to his father, who wrote them down. In his early life, Mozart would travel as a child prodigy starting around 1762. These trips were far from luxurious, with poverty, near-fatal illness, and other circumstances ravaging their excursions. After staying a year in Salzburg, Wolfgang and Leopold alone would set out for Italy. In Italy, Mozart would continue his prodigious journey, composing operas that were well received, as well as other pieces of music. He would largely live off of opera commissions at this time, which were a primary source of his income. In 1773, at the age of 17, Mozart would be employed at the Salzburg court as a court musician. This allowed Mozart and his passion to flourish. However, Mozart would begin to grow tired of Salzburg as a city. This was largely because his salary as a Salzburg court musician was low, 150 florins a year. The court theatre would then shut down. By 1778, Mozart would find more work in Salzburg, but this time for triple the money, 450 florins a year. This, however, did not cure the discontent which Mozart held for Salzburg, and he remained unhappy, desperate to find more. Mozart would, in 1781, visit Vienna with his employer to meet the emperor. This came with the aspiration of being able to play for him in order to ascend the ladder in terms of social echelon, income, and class. This, however, would be hindered by his employer with whom he came, who would hinder his ability to play for the emperor, sometimes being blocked from performing for him. This eventually led to Mozart resigning and leaving with a, quote, kick up the arse, leaving him working as a freelance composer and performer in Vienna. This came too with major quarrels with his father, who sided against Mozart, and with his employer. This ended up being a significant and major turning point in Mozart's life as we go on to part 2, the middle years. Mozart began his career in Vienna, initially performing well and sustaining himself well financially. He prospered as both a pianist and a composer, and established a prominent reputation for himself. Mozart would move in with the Weber family and would marry Constance Weber, which was a relationship that started tumultuously. Constance and Mozart would have 6 children, 2 of which would survive past infancy. Mozart's career in Vienna proved to be the best thing that would happen to him, as his appointments therein would provide him with the income he needed to sustain the lifestyle he wanted. The Vienna life that he lived allowed him to network and become acquainted with many a composer, musician, theatrical performer, and aristocrat. Mozart would go on to continue to practice in his hobbies given his income, which included dancing and billiards. He also kept pets, including a dog, a canary, and a horse. One of Mozart's more famous characteristics is his childish sense of humour, which is most well known in the form of the canon Leck mich im Arsch, which I will leave you to attempt to translate. This B-flat major canon was written in 1782. in Vienna. Between 1782 and 1787, Mozart and his wife would become as rich as they would ever be. Mozart would, during this time, go on to meet the also famous Joseph Haydn. He would also perform many works at a high level, earning himself substantial income and allowing himself and his wife to live an expensive lifestyle. His prior income of 450 florins would now become the annual cost of his rent. Mozart would go on to have a successful return to operatic composition in 1786, although this return to opera would go on to be short-lived. At this time, Mozart was 31, at the peak of his life. The late 1780s saw a dramatic decline in the living conditions of Mozart and his wife, as demand for his services and, by extension, his income had a sharp drop due to the Austro-Turkish War, during which demand for musicians plummeted. Between 1788 and 1790, financial strife became a significant cause of concern for Mozart as he once again struggled to make ends meet and returned to the familiar state of poverty that he had experienced in his earlier years. His income by now was only a third of what it had been at the start of the decade. At the turn of the decade, things began to improve for Mozart. He composed a large number of works, and things started to look better for him, in no small part thanks to the annuities that were awarded to him by wealthy patrons elsewhere in Europe in exchange for compositional work. This year, 1971, however, would be Mozart's last year before illness that would eventually kill him. In September of that same year, Mozart would fall ill in Prague. He attempted to continue his professional functions, but by November his health was too far gone to continue. During this time he was bedridden and was preoccupied by writing his Requiem, a now well-known piece that could be dared to be called Mozart's magnum opus. Mozart would be nursed by his wife and sister until he would soon die on the 6th of December 1791 at the age of 35 on a calm and mild day. A day later, Mozart would be buried in a grave for the common man, which would be excavated after 10 years. The precise cause of his death remains unknown. Mozart lived an extreme life, battling poverty and conflict, whilst at the same time living in some of the most luxurious areas and enjoying a high income. His eclectic life would then come to an end abruptly at the age of 35. I hope you enjoyed this trip into the life of one of the world's most well-known names and a figurehead for the entirety of classical music. If you learned something, please make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment telling me what you learned. If you enjoyed this video, you will definitely enjoy this one here, so give that one a watch now that this one is over. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.